And good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Kim Davis. Today is Tuesday, May the 14th, and thank you for all being a part of Chalk Talk today. I have a whole show planned out that I'm excited to be able to share with you. But then I just saw some breaking news that I think I have to obviously start this show with. Unfortunately, the Reverend Bill Lawson, not just a minister, but a civil rights icon nationally, but right here in Houston, has transitioned. He's passed away this morning. And so I have to start the show there, sending my condolences not only to Melanie, um, a friend of mine, his daughter, and the entire Lawson family, but also the entire family from Wheeler Avenue, because he's been such a part of. He started that church, but such a part of this community. And I had a chance to know him and to learn from him, and so um, I feel compelled to start with honoring him at the start of this show. That's what kind of happens, things change at the last minute. And so Channel 13 put together a piece about his life, and I think I can share it with you. um, Let me see. I've got to stop sharing one thing to share another. And there's a story that I want to be able to share. Let me get to that page.
Sad for our family here at ABC 13, and really a sad day for the city of Houston as well. We are unfortunate to have to report the passing of Reverend William Lawson. He's Melanie Lawson's father, 95 years old. He is absolutely an icon here in the city of Houston. Reverend William Lawson founded Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, and he was a longtime advocate and leader in the civil rights struggle in this country. He passed away this morning rather. Melanie Lawson Reverend Lawson came to Houston nearly 7 decades ago, and ABC 13's Tom Abrams shares his lasting legacy, really that all of us have benefited from.
And I would never have dreamt of being a preacher.
Bill Lawson was much more than a preacher.
We expect to at least make our presence felt, whether it's by march or in other means.
He was an advocate, a leader, and a change agent.
I've always been involved in nonviolent protest.
Lawson moved to Houston from Kansas City in 1955, taking a job to lead the Baptist Student Union at Texas Southern University, the same year as the Rosa Parks protest on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. The civil rights movement gathered steam across the country and found its way to Houston, and students at TSU who staged a sit-in at the Weingartens on Alameda. They were arrested, and Lawson and his wife Audrey led the effort to bail them out.
That was the beginning of civil rights in Houston, and I was the person who had to give leadership to it.
He was a reluctant but effective voice, and in 1962 founded Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church with just 13 members. Lawson's voice grew in strength, and soon he was among the giants working tirelessly toward equality. Among those with whom he worked, Martin Luther King Jr.
And when he came to the house, he would bring people like Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte, any number of other people. But they were people who realized the seriousness of the cause.
King tried unsuccessfully to recruit Lawson to his efforts in Atlanta, sending a young Jesse Jackson to make the ask.
We fell between Mrs. Lawson and the church and his Houston on the brain. He wouldn't leave to come and work with Dr. King.
Instead, he worked with King from Houston, where his calm voice ushered change. His congregation grew, and generations of Houstonians sought his counsel. Today, the church is home to more than 12,000. Lawson retired in 2004. His beloved wife, Audrey, died in 2015. They were married for 61 years and had 4 children, Melanie, Cheryl, Roxanne, and Eric, who died in 2021. But as much as his family, he leaves behind a legacy which has grown beyond its humble beginnings and the echo of his voice.
What I want people to remember most is what things Audrey and I did for young people and children. And my hope is that they will feel a sense of responsibility to reach out and to help other people the same way.
The Reverend.
So that's a story that Channel 13 ran that had put together. I thought it's the best way. I can't even say more than what they could add, other than it is, as Charles said, I have no word. It's a tough loss, and we intellectually we know that time comes for all of us, but it still makes it very difficult. So what a loss for his family and a loss for the community. Reverend William Lawson was just icon is used so much, but that's who he was for so many of us. He really lived the life of helping the least among us, and he was one of 4 pastors that stood with Martin Luther King Jr. when he came to Houston. There were so many who were afraid that would not take that walk, and so this is how he lived his entire life, standing up for justice and civil rights. And it was an honor to get a chance to know him, and for him to have kind of known me. When you can know people when you can actually sit under them, and it's just what a legacy he leaves behind, that Dr. Cosby has been carrying on over at Wheeler, and just so many places you look and you see him. I know, I get it. Charles says, I have no words. Exactly. Hey, Don, thank you for being here. Heaven has gained a great soul. It's a tough loss. And even though people may say, well, he lived to be 95, there's no number of time for someone that you love when it's your family or someone that you respect. And you say, who's to say, maybe there's 200 years. I don't know, but it just never seems to be long enough. So praying for Melanie and her family, and all those at Wheeler Avenue who have been with him for so long, been a part of the church, and just see him everywhere. Hey, hello, Marsha. Good morning. Good morning. So I wanted to start the show by showing the story the Channel 13 ran about Reverend Bill Lawson, because they put together a piece about his legacy and his life. So that's how I am starting the show today, because listen, I run my show like it's a live TV show, and in live TV things happen. So I got the unfortunate news right before the show came on that Reverend Lawson had transitioned, and wanted to start it by honoring him and sharing a bit of his life, in case you follow Chalk Talk and maybe you're not in Houston, or maybe you're not familiar with who he is, but he is somebody important enough to share his story. And of course, 13 would do the great job of it. So that's how we are starting the show today. Rest in peace, Reverend Lawson. Job well done, my friend. Yes, news was just released that Reverend Lawson has passed. And so that's why I started the show with a story, a video that Channel 13 ran about Reverend Lawson. So, if you have thoughts about him or memories of him, feel free to drop them in the chat. He has been such a great leader for our city and really for our nation, and when you know the story of him, and as I mentioned, how he marched with Dr. King, where he was one of only 4 back in his time in Houston that would actually stand with him, 4 other pastors, because there was a fear about being associated with Dr. King. And he was one of the brave ones that stood and walked alongside and was a part of this, a legitimate part of this, the civil rights journey and this fight for social justice and peace many, many years ago. And then we find ourselves, as I get ready to make this hard turn back to sports, we find ourselves at this very pivotal time in history today, as we talk about losing an icon who fought a lot of these battles so many years ago. And here in 2024, we find ourselves, needing to fight these same battles all over again. It's amazing that we're talking about whether we should read certain books and who should have rights, and what people's lives matter. It's amazing. And so I'm going to say this as I get ready to make the hard turn and tell you about what's happening in the world of sports. That's why you gotta be engaged in the process. That's why community matters. That's why voting matters. Here I never tell you who to vote for. I'm a journalist. That's not what we're supposed to do. But I'm going to always, always, always remind you about voting. so that people like Reverend Lawson's life and their life's work is not in vain, because it's been people like Reverend Lawson, some of your ancestors, my ancestors, who've been a part of this fight and this journey for a better life, for equality, for all those things, some that we've started to enjoy. And now we're seeing those things slowly being peeled and stripped away. Be engaged and vote. And so, yes, Carolyn, he really was, good morning, my friend from out in California, a real icon. So it is a reminder, like we do so often here on Chalk Talk. It's, the show is, the tagline is Chalk Talk, more than just sports. We're not able to really do a lot of the things without the battle of the work that people did before us in terms of the civil rights movement. That is not just for Black people, but for women, for Latinos, for the LGBTQ community. I mean, it all started with civil rights. And so it's a reminder, right? It's a great time to be reminded and to reflect back on the necessity and the importance of the work of the civil rights movement and the people who were beaten and fought and did all that heavy lifting and hard work. And so we don't get to sit back today and say, I don't feel like it. Okay. We can't just not feel like it. We have got to be active participants, because as we are seeing, a lot of those privileges and rights, things we thought were rights, can be stripped away, and those things are slowly happening. So as I always say, vote your values. What matters to you and your family and your community, vote that way. But you can't vote if you're not registered. So get registered, stay registered, be involved in the process, engaged, and make sure that you always, always, always vote. That leads me to this reminder. Early voting starts next week on the 20th, next Monday. You'll have all week, Monday through Friday, to early vote. And then Election Day is the day after Memorial Day on May 28th. That is for the runoff from the election that we had in March. So that election's coming up. There'll be another election coming up a little bit later. But if you're not registered, you can't participate. So get registered. All right, get registered. Charles says, as a young lawyer, I found myself in a number of meetings and gatherings at Reverend Lawson's home to discuss and implement strategies on various community issues. His guidance and leadership was invaluable. Yeah, that's I can only imagine. I went to his church when I was in high school. Got to know him, when I was young and considering and thinking about broadcasting. It was just how I first met Melanie, and then I met others in his family, and he always was super supportive. I moved away, went to college, came back, started this work, and he always would remember. And we've had times over the years to have some chats, but I won't claim to have the closest relationship like his family and his members at Wheeler, but it was always an honor to just be around him and to sit under his teaching and to hear and learn from him. Just such a gentle soul. And it is definitely a loss. And I know it's got to be difficult for Melanie and the rest of her family and all of those at Wheeler Avenue who for so many years sat under his tutelage, including Dr. Marcus Cosby, who is now currently the pastor and was shepherded, if you will, by Reverend Bill Lawson. So definitely want to remember him and say rest in peace, rest in power, but definitely rest. And it's one of those times where there's no doubt you can say job well done. So with that, I am going to make this hard pivot and move to what I was going to talk about until I got that news. I just felt it was the only respectful way to start the show, by mentioning and honoring Dr. Reverend Bill Lawson. But listen, there have been some things happening in the world of sports. They don't seem nearly as important when we lose someone or when something big happens outside of the world of sports. But nevertheless, we will get to it. Last week, the Houston Texans held their rookie minicamp. So, it's minicamp, right? Like nothing really gets rolling until training camp, but it's minicamp last week. And then OTAs are coming up next week. Then there'll be a minicamp in June. And then in July, it's training camp, and it's on, right? It's on. Tomorrow on Wednesday, the full NFL schedule will be released. We know the teams that everybody's playing. We know the home games and the road games, but we don't know the actual schedule. That will be released tomorrow. And I will be doing a a special with the sports guys over at KPRC Local 2. I've not been with them. You're used to seeing me, if you follow, on KHOU, my good friends at Sports Extra, Jason Bristol and gang. I do that show a lot. I obviously do a lot with Nate Griffin at Fox in the morning news, and Isaiah at Fox 26 at night on The Insight. And so I used to work at Local 2, right? If you know my career, I used to work at Channel 2 before I went out and started my own business. But I will be on with them tomorrow night. They're doing a special schedule release show. It's going to be on their streaming platform, but I'll make sure I post it, so hopefully you guys can chime in. I'm curious to see how many, if any, well, I know there'll be some, but how many primetime games or nationally publicized, nationally televised games will the Houston Texans get, right? After the season they had last year, after the stir. I mean, think about it. Their head coach was runner-up to Coach of the Year. He should have won that. He should have won that award, but I digress. CJ Stroud, their quarterback, was the offensive rookie of the year, and Will Anderson Jr. won the defensive rookie of the year. So there's no shortage of excitement around this Houston Texans team, and it will be interesting to see how the NFL rewards them, if you will, in terms of how many games are they going to be televised nationally. Are there any Monday night games? Are there Sunday night games? I'm sure there's Thursday night games, my least favorite. But, you know, how many games? It's been a few years since the Texans had primetime games. Now, they were on nationally last year, the last game of the season, regular season, against the Colts, because it was such a big game. That game was flexed. And then the playoff games. But now, people around the league will get a chance to see them a little more often. Good morning, Ellen, my sister. Welcome. So that show is tomorrow night, and I will definitely post where you can catch the show. So we'll be doing the schedule release on KPRC Local 2 with Randy McElvoy and whoever else he has on. So as I mentioned, making this hard pivot to sports from sharing the information, the news about Reverend Bill Lawson. I ran a video that Channel 13 had that really they put together about his life. And I may run it again later in the show in case you missed it. If you're watching the replay and you just hopped in, you can always go back and watch the beginning of the show. I started the show with the news about Reverend Lawson and shared the video from ABC 13 that they produced about Reverend Lawson's life, which really kind of shared his life and his life's work and his family and his wife who preceded him in death, Audrey Lawson, and one of his sons. But tough news today for the Lawson family, the Wheeler Avenue family, and people everywhere who knew Reverend Bill Lawson. He transitioned earlier today at the age of 95. So as we talk about the Texans schedule release, I mentioned that the rookie mini camp was last week. Let me come and let you hear from head coach DeMeco Ryans. Here we go.
It's a new space for them, so there's a little nervousness about it, and they are uptight because it's a lot of unknown. You step into an NFL building the first time for these guys, a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty. So they are a little uptight, a little nervous, that's true for every rookie. That's human nature, right? And I tell the guys too, they definitely have to relax, but it takes time. Once they continue to be here every day and see how we do things, they'll get used to it and they'll relax a little bit. Like today it was funny to see them all in the meeting room. They're all up front. They all have their notebooks open. They're ready. It's like it's the first day of school, right? Everybody's excited that first day of school. And I told the guys, just remember this day, right? Remember how attentive you are, how locked in you are, right? I want that same approach always, because that's what's going to give you an edge.
So that was head coach DeMeco Ryans last week. Rookie minicamp was Friday and Saturday. We got to watch camp on Friday and talk with Coach Ryans and also a couple of the players. And so I want to let you also hear from, this is also Coach Ryans. Let me do this. They've changed some settings. Not that one, on this platform. And so I have to share the videos individually. Let's see. That's the one.
When you guys, it's hard, right? You're a college player, you're coming out and you do all this training for combine. So you're working on all the drills, the 40-time things that really don't translate to football. You're working on those things to make sure you put on your best outing, right, for all the combine drills. And then you go through your pro day again, you're working on your drills, or you may have to run a 40. So a lot of things that these guys had to focus on that doesn't translate to playing football. And then when we get them here, now it's all football, and it's hard because guys haven't been training as they would like. You know, guys are probably on their own training, so it's a difficult process for young players coming in. I think that's why you see a really big jump for players after year 1 to year 2, because now they can truly focus on football training in their off season as opposed to training for specific drills of that nature.
Doesn't that kind of remind you of training for the test, right? The standardized test. I mean, it's not quite the same, but that popped in my head when we were sitting there last week and talking with him. You're right, because they're on their own. There's not quite the structure. They're working out for the combine, right? So you're running and you're doing drills, many of which have nothing to do, to me, really say how you're going to translate as an NFL player, right? It always goes back to the tape, but it's interesting that that's the process, and the process is what it is. And that's why it is important that you have the right scouting department to guide and lead the way in terms of draft and selecting players, following the tape, doing the interviews, because like they say, tape don't lie. Like, what does the tape tell you about these young players? So I thought that was interesting. We got a chance also to talk to Kamari Lassiter, who is their second round draft pick. They didn't have a first round pick. Remember, they made some moves. And so Kamari Lassiter, we got a chance to talk to him, and you may have seen that clip. I ran a little bit of it on some of my platforms, and he is a defensive back. He's a cornerback, and no shortage of confidence, which is great. Of course, they're all, even the ones who I've worked my whole life to be here. I'm excited, but it still is. You walk into this building of this place that your whole life you've worked to get here. And by here, I mean to the NFL. And you walk in, and we asked him, did you have a wow moment? He said, yeah, I had to just step back for a minute because they're like, I'm actually here. So they're in the building, and you're with the coaches, and right now you're just with your other teammate, your fellow rookies and your fellow rookies that are undrafted and drafted, undrafted free agents, and those who came along in the draft. But just now you're in the building, and that's like Coach Ryan said. Hey, they were all sitting in the front. They had their notepads, and they were very attentive. And he's like, keep that same energy, right? Because you're going to need that if you're going to really be successful. So with that, we also talked with Kamari Lassiter, who played his collegiate ball at Georgia. Georgia and Alabama are big rivals, but the schools have also both been very, very successful. DeMeco Ryans played his collegiate, his college football at Alabama. Kamari Lassiter played for Georgia. And so one of the questions that was asked of Kamari was, coming from both of you guys, coming from these great programs, does it help you really understand what to expect from a culture standpoint? And I'm going to share what Kamari's reaction. All right, here you go. This is Kamari Lassiter.
Him and Coach Smart and what they preach.
Coach went to Bama?
Yeah.
I ain't know that. But those two programs, very high profile programs, got a lot of the same, a lot of similarities. And what was the question? I'm sorry.
The standard that Kirby set for you guys, similar to standard set at Alabama based off of NECTA, or just those type of programs in the SEC?
Oh yeah, of course. The standard that was set at Georgia is super high. It don't matter, how old you are. It don't matter how many years you play. The standard is the standard, and it's always going to be that. Coach Smart does a really good job of just making sure that everyone buys in, and I think that Coach Ryan does a great job of doing that as well. That probably comes from his background of being at the other place. So
He said it probably comes from his background at being at the other place. It was kind of classic. His look was he was authentically surprised. He was like, Coach went to Bama? Like, I didn't know that, so I thought it was a cool moment. Another player we got a chance to talk with is, was Blake Fisher. Hang on a second. And he is an offensive lineman that came from Notre Dame. So he's got some history with Patterson, who played at Notre Dame also already on the team, offensive lineman. And, he's played mostly outside. He's been a tackle. If you follow this team, you're like, man, what are they going to do about guard play? I remember asking him on draft day, have they ever played inside? And he said, no. He had not, but whatever they ask him to do, he's going to do, but he's a tackle and he's mostly played on the right side, but I think he feels comfortable on either side. But again, really glad to be here. Said he's had a chance to talk with Laramie Tunzel and Titus. And here's Fisher talking about those conversations and then also really telling us a little bit about what style of player he is. So let me.
Laramie, everybody knows him. He's a specialist when it comes to pass protection. He's dominant. He's long. He's physical. Same goes for Titus. Real powerful, strong hands, square. In both of their sets, they have a versatility at different sets that they take. Within their game, smart players. They help others around them. So they're good. They're two really good guys. That I can come in and learn from, and obviously get better from because they've been doing it for quite some time.
How do you describe yourself, and what are some of your strengths that you bring to the game?
Yeah, I would say I'm a physical run blocker. I play with tight hands, just the way that I'm able to get my toes on a defensive lineman, and just my explosiveness, the power that I bring from my lower body. And I was just saying, in pass protection, just the ability to, have multiple sets, and then, multiple sets, and then, be able to give, defenders, different things in my hands. And I think I'm a smart, physical, player with a high IQ. See a lot of different things on the field which in essence helps, the guys next to me.
So that was one of your rookies, offensive lineman, third-round draft pick. And it's always listen, when they start talking about like the technique and what they do, that's exciting to me. I don't do a whole lot of super, super technical stuff on the show because I want everybody, whatever level your sports knowledge is, to be engaged. But I do like to bring you some of it so you can go out into the world and be like, well, I heard XYZ today. So you have a little something you can use. That's what Chalk Talk is good for. So it's exciting, right? It is football season. It's always football season, as you know, especially if you cover an NFL team. There's very little downtime. So we will be talking about OTAs next week. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll be talking about minicamp for all of them, rookies and veterans. Still haven't had a chance to meet and talk with Stephon Diggs. I'm sure he will be at minicamp. There'll be probably our first opportunity. I mean, speak for myself, mine, to talk to him and interview him. But stay tuned, right? That is what's happening in the world of the National Football League as it relates to the Houston Texans. Schedule release show tomorrow. I'm doing a special with the guys over at KPRC Local 2. All right, so here's the other thing that's happening. The NBA draft is coming up. The lottery pick was this past weekend, right? So there's 14 teams that get their little balls that go in the hat, if you will, to be able to select to see where they end up picking. Last year there was a lot of excitement around the lottery because of Victor Wembanyama, right? He was a guy that everybody wanted. He was the hands down clear number one overall pick. And the Rockets, who had the second worst team in the league in terms of schedule, ended up picking fourth. So it was disappointing for them initially, but they got Amen Thompson, and then they were able to get with the 10th pick, Cam Whitmore, both of who turned out to be very productive players for this team. They came along slowly, but they were productive, got in the lineup. And so one of the questions that was asked, we had a media availability with Rafael Stone briefly on Sunday after the lottery balls were pulled and Houston had the 3rd overall pick. Now, remember, this Houston team is very young. They've been building from the draft the last few years. Last summer was the first time they went out and really invested in some veteran free agents. That's how you got Fred Van Vliet and what is his name now? It escapes me. That came from Memphis. I've got to look it up. I had a brain dump right there. But the first time they actually went out and got real players, real veterans, if you will. And so I got to go to their roster because I can't. Dylan Brooks. I'm like, what? I'm looking at his face. I'm seeing his braids. Dylan Brooks. So they went out and invested in veterans, right? Gave veterans good contracts to come in. It made a huge difference, but they're still a relatively young team. And so now here they are and still in the draft business. I think this was a pick that they got from Brooklyn. So we talked to Rafael Stone about, does this change anything? If you remember at the end of the season, when we had a chance to talk with Rafael Stone and head coach Emi Udoka, Rafael was very clear. He said, I like my team. I like the team, especially with everybody coming back healthy. And that meant, Steven Adams for the first time being healthy as he's a member of the Rockets team. They traded for him this past season, knew that he wouldn't play because he was recovering from an injury. And so expecting him to be fully healthy. Tari Eason, who of course went out and had surgery, expecting him to be back and fully healthy. Alperen Şengün, expecting him back and fully healthy. And so Rafael said, listen, I like my team. I'm always, doing my job. I have to always look and see, are there ways that I can improve my team? But I like my team overall. So fast forward to this weekend, this past, Sunday on Mother's Day, we got a chance to talk to him after they had, gotten the 3rd overall pick to see, did anything change? Now that you have this pick, does it change your thought process? And the other question is there space for, like a rookie to actually be a part of the lineup? So here's what Rafael shared with us on Sunday.
I guess to give you a little bit more context, there is no rule that like Amen didn't start the vast bulk of the games this year, which was a change for us because Jalen started immediately and Jabari started immediately. But I loved Amen's progress. I don't think that the only way to develop is if you immediately start and get handed 35 minutes a game. I don't even think it's necessary to play right away. Like, I think that there have been Hall of Fame basketball players that had to work their way up. There's been a lot of them. And so, yeah, I think I do think minutes will be more crunched for us next year than they have been in the past. But honestly, they were crunched for us last year. And, both Amen and Cam kind of fought for, earned, and ultimately got their minutes. And I don't think there's only one way to develop young players. I don't think there's only one way to build a roster out. So we definitely would draft someone and bring them into the fold if it makes sense.
So that was Rafael Stone. That's the video. I think he must have been in a hotel room. He's been traveling, I think scouting internationally, looking at players. This week is a pre-draft camp in Chicago. Bronny, LeBron James's son, is there. Apparently he had a very impressive day on Monday. He shot the ball really well from the three. They said he was the best three-point shooter of the day, if you will. You don't know how it's going to all shake out. And also that he's put on about 10 pounds of muscle, maybe 15 pounds of muscle. I'm hearing this from people who are covering the camp. I'm obviously not there. But Bronny is giving it a shot to see, does he go in the draft? And so here's the thing that happened last night. Here's the LeBron James news. So the Lakers, of course, were swept. They're out. They fired their coach, Darvin Ham. He is out. And here is, and the question about, what will LeBron do? Will he opt out? Will he stay? So last night there was a game Monday night in Cleveland, and LeBron and his wife Savannah were courtside for the Celtics Cavaliers game. The Celtics won that game 109-102, just FYI, and the Celtics lead that series 3-1. But it started kind of a firestorm, if you will, of what's LeBron doing? What does this mean? And so LeBron is calculating and strategic, if he's anything, right? Of course, he said, "Hey, listen," and he called his teammates to say, "Hey, I'm going." They're from Ohio, and so for Mother's Day they were there, and he told his teammates he was going to be at the game, which it's cool because if you turn the TV on and LeBron is courtside at the Cavaliers Celtics game, what does that mean, right? So general managers around the league are calling. Does that mean something? Is it what's this mean? He said, "Hey, I'm just here watching a game." And so what's funny is obviously he can go watch a game. He and Savannah, if they like, no big deal. But courtside, he could have also been in a suite if he wanted to be incognito. But he was very much present courtside. What does it mean? I have no idea. But it's just interesting conversations. But speaking of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference semifinals, I mentioned the Celtics won that game last night in Cleveland. The final was 109-102. The Celtics have a 3-1 lead in the series. The other game last night was in the Western Conference semifinals, where the Thunder beat the Maverick 100-96. That series is now tied at 2 games apiece. The games go back to Oklahoma City. And so I think the Mavericks had a real shot in that game that they didn't capitalize on. And so that's where that series is. Tonight, the other two semifinals are in action. So it's in the other Eastern Conference semifinals, the Knicks and the Pacers. That series is tied at 2 games apiece. Kind of have to give the nod to the Pacers just because the Knicks are shorthanded. They're kind of banged up, and without being healthy, you kind of give the nod, if you will, to the Pacers. But we'll see what happens. The series is tied at 2 games apiece, and it's moved back to New York. The other series, the Western Conference semifinals, the other one, the Timberwolves and the Nuggets, that series is tied at 2 games apiece. Game 5 is tonight in Denver. Now, remember last week, the Timberwolves jumped out big, and they just bullied the Nuggets in those first 2 games and jumped out to a 2-0 lead by winning both of the games against the Nuggets in Denver. After that, there were many pundits on the national show saying, "That's it. The Nuggets gonna get swept." And I was like, yeah, I just don't see it. I'm not saying the T-Wolves won't win the series, but I just didn't think the Denver Nuggets, the team that many picked to win it again, definitely need to come out of the West, the defending national champion with the MVP of the year, that they were going out like that to get swept. And so what happens? They don't just win 1 game, they win 2. They win both games in Minnesota. So now the series is tied at 2 games apiece. It shifts back to the Nuggets, and which gives the Nuggets home court advantage again, because the next 2 out of 3 games will be played in Denver. So we'll see. The series is tied at 2-2. Game 5 is tonight at 9:30. The Knicks and Pacers are tied at 2-2. Game 5 is tonight at 7. And then the other series, the Celtics and Cavaliers. The Celtics could close out the series tomorrow night. They're back at home in Boston for Game 4. They have a 3-1 lead. They could close it out tomorrow night. And then the Maverick and the Thunder, the other series, is also tied at 2-2. But that series shifts back to Oklahoma City. So that is what's happening around the NBA as we, the playoffs heat up. Now, what else is happening? Well, the WNBA kicks off its season tonight. The season tips off with 4 games today. They're the Liberty at the Mystics, the Fever at the Sun, the Mercury at the Aces, and then the Lynx at the Storm. So that is what's happening in the WNBA. Their season starts tonight. There's a lot of excitement and anticipation about it. I am going to have a guest on soon, a lady by the name of Carla Cagle, who has launched a line of women's sportswear, and she is going to join me. She's not from the sports world. She's from the financial industry, but wanted to have this footprint, start this line. And so we're going to talk about why. And it's more than just, oh, here's some clothing, here's some apparel, but what it is she's saying about women and women in sports. And so she's going to join me soon. If I had not had such a crazy week and so many other things happening, she would have joined me today. But she will be coming up to visit with us here on Chalk Talk. I think it'll be a fun interview. I think you will be interested in hearing from her. So before I go, I've got to talk about the Houston Astros. The Astros are back in action there. They are right now in a homestand. They're playing the Oakland A's, and they opened the homestand last night with a win. The final was 9-2. It was great. It's always great for the Astros to get a win, right? Their record is now 16-25. They're nine games under 500. They are not at the bottom of their division. They're right above the bottom, but they went 5-5 over the last 10 games. They've got to start winning some series. We talked about that. They beat the A's last night 9-2. The Athletics have a 19-24 record. Okay. The Astros are 16-25. Last night, Alex Bregman had 2 homers. He drove in 4 runs as the Astros beat the A's. Why that's significant is because those 2 home runs were his second and third home runs of the entire season. He has been struggling at the plate, and wherever you can get back in it, right? Get your swing, find your groove, whatever, do it. So it was great to see Alex Bregman kind of turn the corner, if you will, last night. And we'll have to see if that continues. Is that enough to get him back to being kind of what you expect from Alex Bregman, right? Is that what you expect? He entered Monday's game with just 1 home run in 144 at-bats this season. So that was his 6th career multi-homer game last night. And he's been working. I mean, he's going early to the cage, getting in extra batting practice. He's working on it and trying to work his way through it. So it was great to see him last night, if you will, kind of have that kind of outing. So I told you that the Astros are not the bottom of the division, but they're just above the bottom. So they're 16-25, and Los Angeles Angels are under them at 15-27. Seattle leads the division, and then there's Texas, and then there's Oakland, and then there's Houston. So, we say it's early, but at some point we've got to say it is still early. It's only May. The season is long, but they've got to win series. They've got to win series to make up some ground. So tonight, Framber Valdez will go to the mound for the Astros. They have not announced yet who's going to start for Oakland. And here's the other thing: as trade conversations heat up, the name that we keep hearing out there in those baseball streets is Framber Valdez. That he's the biggest name that could be somebody on the trade block. The Astros have not expressed that. This is just, the word in the baseball streets, if you will, that the Yankees need somebody else. They need somebody. They could use a starting pitcher, and why not a Framber? Framber is going to be a free agent. So, but that's baseball. Your name gets tossed around. You see what happens, but they got a win last night, and they're looking to get another win tonight to try to stack some wins together. Oakland they are 2 games behind Oakland in the American League West. Again, I mentioned Oakland is 19-24, and Houston is 16-25. Oakland has gone 3-7 over their last 10 games, while the Astros have gone 5-5. So we will see what happens tonight when the Astros take the field. I will be there covering the game tonight. I will cover the game tomorrow, and also I'll be a part of the the NFL schedule release, really more about the Texans schedule release with the guys over at KPRC Local 2 and their special that they're doing about the release. So that is that. Thank you, as always, for being a part of Chalk Talk. Don't forget our good friends over at I Love Jinka. Go to ilovejinka.com for more information about the products, where you can find it. And if you're in Houston, I'm encouraging you to go to All Natural. It's in Palm Center. They're open Monday through Sunday. They have I Love Jinka in stock. I've been telling you about HEB for years. You can still get it there. That may not be close to you, but if you are anywhere in the southeast part of town or central Houston, go over to Palm Center and support that support that operation. You can also get your Kimmy Treats popcorn there. If you are looking for popcorn, it is there. And I'm going to be looking at a couple other places that may want to carry the popcorn as well. So that is what's happening in the world of Chalk Talk and I Love Jinka and Kimmy Treats and Eyebrow Energy. Remember, we talk about eyebrows. Can you see my eyebrows? Kim Edwards-Williams, the co-founder of I Love Jinka. My first entree to knowing her was about eyebrows. And she is on this mission. She's done eyebrows for decades to really help people take their brows back, because the brows have gotten out of control. They should frame your face. They should not be. Yeah, I'll let her talk to you more about it. She's going to join us. We're going to talk about it. But Eyebrow Energy, you can find out more from, if you want to know about the serum she has. They have a growth serum. Or if you want I Love Jinka, go online to ilovejinka.com and you can find out where you can get it closest to you. You can also, if you're not even in Houston or Texas, or you just don't feel like going anywhere, you can order it online at their website at ilovejinka.com. That is going to do it for me today. I'm out of time. Once again, rest in peace to Reverend Bill Lawson. If you joined the show late, go back and catch the replay. At the beginning of the show, I ran a story that ABC 13 here in Houston did about the life and legacy of Reverend Bill Lawson. I think it does a really good job of capturing the legacy of him and what he has meant here in Houston and really around the country. And so, again, condolences to Melanie and her entire family and the entire Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church family for the loss of such an icon, a word that sometimes gets tossed around, but somebody who definitely deserves it. An icon, a legend, a servant of the people, and he did that well. So remember, if you're not registered to vote, get registered. Early voting next week for the runoff from that March election, from the primary. Make sure that you vote. If you're like, oh, who should I vote for? Go online, get information, know about the policies and the people so that you can make your choice, so that you can vote your values, things that will make sense for you and your family and your community. That is my encouragement to you. And vote early. It's just easier. There's only 5 days of early voting, but you've got Monday through Friday to early vote next week. And then Election Day is on May the 28th. Remember, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. Make it a great, great week. Peace.